Shijishin is the Lion Mountain, a giant mountain that sprawled among the plains, which looked very intimidating, but at the same time fascinating, because around the mountain there was a rainbow and a beautiful forest. The rebirth of spiritual energy provoked unrest among the ferocious beasts. These very beasts were trying to escape in a large animal stream that was rushing at great speed, sweeping away everything in its path. Together with this stream, she was running, a stranger who was asked to stop because she could not escape, but the girl, not listening to those who shouted at her, tried to run wherever her eyes looked, if only away from these voices that called her and ran after her. The girl had tied ropes on her legs, like a slave, and her clothes were torn off, and because she was running with her bare feet, all her legs were cut, but this did not prevent her from running away from the pursuers who tried to grab her. A whole army of armed soldiers ran after the girl, who tried to stop her, because according to them, the girl could not escape while the animals that were nearby were raging. But the girl continued to run away even despite the animals that were also running next to her. Of course, she was scared by this fact, but she understood that she had no other choice and she just had to keep running from these soldiers. The soldiers realized that the girl was really running away, and that she didn't care, so they decided to open fire. Then someone asked who ordered the shooting, because there were animals below, and it was very dangerous, because if one of the soldiers had accidentally hit the beast, it would have been hard for them to explain the commander. But it was too late, because of his back there were clouds of smoke, and while he was trying to explain this to his colleague, they saw a giant boar. This boar was a ferocious beast, a mutant boar, who was already ready to attack them, because one of the soldiers hit him right in the fang. The soldiers were scared and were ready to defend themselves, because this ferocious animal was running right at them and was of such gigantic size that even all kinds of weapons would not have coped with it. So the soldiers rushed into the scattering. The commander tried to interrogate them where they were running away. Did they really think they could escape from this boar? But the soldiers did not listen to him and continued their escape. Taking out a huge cannon, the commander said that their cowardice was the result of weak fighting power, and the big boy needed a big cannon, exactly the one he got, and which was to attack this boar. Having shot directly at the animal, he of course missed and could not hit him. The boar became even more enraged, and he ran straight at the commander, who also tried to load the cannon faster to shoot again. And just when he thought that everything would end now, an incredible force with golden lightning appeared in front of them. Seeing through the clouds of smoke, sharp fangs, and golden fur, they realized that in front of them was the king of Shijishin, namely the golden lion. His mane was so magnificent, and he had a horn in his forehead. This animal was so majestic and huge that everyone was surprised how beautiful it was. A lion, thinking about whether it was made of real gold, because his fur was so golden that the soldiers thought it was gold. Looking at the lion, they were very surprised. The soldiers, standing and looking at the lion, held weapons in their hands and were ready. So one of the soldiers said, was it possible to be sure, without making sure personally, that the beast was golden wool? And he decided to shoot this lion that was standing right above them, towering on a rock. Having fired at the lion, the soldiers thought that they could get this animal. The soldier began to continue shooting at the lion, but the lion didn't care. He was surrounded by protective energy, and throwing himself off the cliff, he decided to jump straight to them, first dealing with one soldier who shot at him, and with one paw the lion went on. At that moment, the commander of the group decided to attack him, who was already able to reload his huge cannon and pointed it directly at the lion. The lion was so fast that he plugged this cannon with his one claw, which surprised the captain very much, and the combat power from the cannon, when the commander decided to shoot, went straight to the captain himself, and the angry animal just looked at how people were dying next to him. Having dealt with everyone, his eyes flashed red, and looking at the battlefield, the lion thought that it was not his fault, because he was unable to control his own strength. Looking at his paws, the hero thought that the fault of people was that they drove these animals here, making a mess on his mountain. We see an ordinary guy, whose name is Liu Fan. The young man was an orphan who, after university, did not come up with anything better than becoming an unofficial employee. And one day he accidentally found himself in this place, and became a werewolf, turning into a golden lion. Speaking of that place, we are talking about a mountain that many have heard about. And from an ordinary young man, the guy began to bear the fate of the king of beasts. And whatever the lion did, the system that was with him showed him what kind of power the lion received every time he did something. Then he could drag his claws and get a sharpness +1. Then he used a lion's roar and used it, getting strength +1. Then he killed 5 intruders and got a blood bond +3, or he put his mane in order and got charisma +1. All these actions greatly embarrassed and irritated the young man, so that in Leo's hotel he did not understand why he was getting stronger regardless of what he was doing. Holding on to his mane, he drew attention to the boar that was in front of him. Seeing the king of beasts, the boar rushed away from him, because he knew about the great power of this mighty animal. This again confused our hero a little, and the system repeated that the young man scared off a small boar and got authority +1. Looking in front of him, suddenly the lion heard a werewolf parrot, who told his majesty that he had destroyed all these monkeys in a matter of seconds, talking about the army that the lion was able to deal with, the same army that was rushing after the girl. Then the lion said that there was no need to flatter him, but it would be better if this parrot helped him, just asking about what he was with this girl, whom these soldiers were hunting. The lion headed in her direction, and the snake informed the lion that, unfortunately, the shockwave threw the girl into the animal stream, which at that moment was running next to her. Hearing this, the lion simply kept silent and decided to look from his rock what had happened down there. The system showed that she was congratulating the young man on the suppression of the animal rebellion, and he received authority +1,000. All the animals crowded around the girl at that moment and stared at her. The girl was lying unconscious on the ground, covered in abrasions and cuts due to what got into the animal stream. At that moment, a lion headed towards her, and all the other animals just bowed their heads in front of him. Leo thought that this girl was clearly not so simple. When he approached her, he saw that even though it was obvious that she was dead, but her body was still full of spiritual energy, which enveloped her body, creating a special field. Blowing on her with his magic breath, the lion looked at what would happen next, and then an astral body separated from her usual body, which was not at all like the girl that was before him. It was a blue-eyed girl in a white robe who appeared before the lion. Looking at him with her blue eyes, she was very surprised, and Leo thought that it was curious, smiling at the beauty. Lion Rock, Cave Ruins. These ruins of the cave were just the same house of the lion in which he lived. There was a road through the forest, and the lion dragged there the girl he had seen before. The girl was crying right in front of him, not realizing what was happening, and Leo tried to calm her down, saying that so that she would not cry, because they don't cry dead. Leo was lying on his bed, which stood on a pedestal, and said that if a girl does not want to be a ghost, then she can simply reincarnate. She was sitting right in front of him on her knees and crying. Blue lights were flying around the girl, and the lion was watching her. Then a system message appeared in front of Leo, where she said that it was discovered that the host had collected a ghost, +1, and therefore it was necessary to get attached as soon as possible. Lev started to panic. He was in shock. He didn't do anything, and where the system window came from, why it appeared in front of him again, Lev couldn't understand. When he read about the fact that it was necessary to bind the ghost, he asked the system again and to himself what it meant, because it was the first time he received such a message. Before that there were only notifications about receiving points. It had to be for a reason, Leo decided. The young man thought that the time of idleness had come to an end, because something was definitely brewing. After careful planning, it was necessary to complete the mission, because the system would not lie to him. Then a creature burst out of the fire, which looked like a fiery stream, and told the lion that it was already too much. Did the lion not see that the girl in front of him was sad? Swimming up to the ghost, this stream spoke, which the girl immediately noticed and was very surprised that the fire was talking to her. The lion was also surprised and looked at the girl in front of him. Then the fire turned into a girl with green hair. It was the candle demon Xiao. She sat down next to the ghost and asked the girl not to be afraid, because the king was not evil. He was just a little straightforward and therefore could scare. She explained to the ghost that was right in front of her. Xiao explained that the lion shared his spirit so that her soul would not be dispersed. And then Xiao told the guest that she had become a demon in the same way. When the king was lying on his bed, he yawned, and because of this he released his power, and the fire that was next to him, which was burning from a candle, was Xiao. She told the girl that relying only on his strength was not enough. There are two conditions for becoming. The first, personal predisposition, and the second, her motivation. The ghost listened attentively. Xiao, who was smiling and trying to cheer the girl up somehow, then hearing about motivation, it cheered her up very much, and she realized that this could be the way out. Xiao, seeing her reaction, asked the girl to tell her what had happened and why she was being chased by those people, the very soldiers who were trying to catch up with her. She bent down and told the girl to agree that Xiao and the king deserved a little more trust than those people who tried to catch up with the girl. After looking into the eyes of the candle demon, the girl relaxed and realized that she could try to trust them. So after a little hesitation, she decided to tell about herself. The girl said that her name was Su Lin and she lived in the village of Man, at the foot of the Lion Rock. Since the revival of spiritual energy, people from their village began to disappear one by one, and now there are about 30 people left. And 9 days ago a group of people suddenly burst into the village of Man north of the mountain stream. This is a village with small houses that stood in the gorge of the cliff and was surrounded by trees, and with this very rock then soldiers came to it. The soldiers stood with their guns and watched the villagers they had gathered in one place. One of the residents asked to let him go and let him go, begging these soldiers, not kneeling in front of them like all the other residents. An elderly man said that he did not want to go there because his son got lost in these forests, and therefore he begged the soldiers to spare him. But the soldier did not care, and hitting the man with his weapon, he said that if the man did not go into the forest, he would kill him on the spot. At that moment, they held a gun near the boy's head and said that he would die next if he did not go into the forest. The guy called his grandfather plaintively, and when he saw it, he said that he would go, just so that the guy would not be touched. The soldiers watched the man go into the forest. The man went there with fear. He went straight into the thick of it, thinking about how it hurt him, because the soldier hit him right in the face with his weapon. But after entering the forest, the man began to change and soon disappeared. Then the soldiers, seeing this, asked each other if their colleagues had seen it, to which they replied that it was something that appeared and disappeared, because they saw black energy and a split that was right in the forest. The villagers were scared when they saw it too and asked each other what it had just been. At that moment, one of the soldiers took the child and forced him to go into the forest, too, to which the mother began to shout that his son should not be touched. But it was useless. The soldiers didn't care, and they decided to accompany the child directly into the forest, saying that he would run straight there. Then they wanted to find the next man who would follow right behind him, so they sent one by one the villagers into this forest. It seemed that everything was so that the villagers were used as guides and the locals disappeared, wandering a little in the black fog. Whenever someone disappeared, the soldiers launched the next one there. So they went there, and children and women and men and even the elderly, and that's how they all disappeared one by one. The soldiers said that they were close, because it was supposed to be the last section of the road, and forced the girl to go. This very girl who was now a ghost, and told Xiao Zhu about her fate, because the turn had reached her. At some point she decided to go into the forest because she had no other choice, and the soldiers were watching her closely. It turned out that this black fog had a hallucinogenic effect. When the girl entered this fog, she unconsciously began to move in one direction, after which she saw her parents in the darkness and ran straight to them, seeing their silhouettes. But when she woke up they were not there. She fell into the pit that these guys were supposed to be looking for, and also what attracted her led her to it. It was a flower and a sarcophagus. She was sitting in front of these attributes. The sarcophagus was tied deep into the trees and looked at it in front of her. Because these people, these soldiers, killed her fellow villagers, killed her parents, she could not let them finish what they started. The girl thought, looking at the flower right in front of her. Realizing that she could not destroy the sarcophagus that weighed a lot and was entangled in the roots of trees, she decided that it was necessary to eat the flower that was right in front of her. After that, she ate the flower and her body became light, and her eyes gained the ability to see in the dark. Soon these soldiers came and they took the sarcophagus by helicopter, but they could not find the flower that was next to it, and the girl hid behind a tree and prayed that she would not be found. The soldiers realized that they had the sarcophagus, but the flower was nowhere to be found. Then the man who flew in this helicopter asked the soldiers where the flower was, because he needed both a sarcophagus and a flower, and if there was no flower, he would not pay a penny. He didn't care about everything the soldiers said. He wanted them to return the flower to him, and the girl who found this pit was killed. Then one of the soldiers said that he looked everywhere and maybe it was a girl who could eat him. So she began to run away from the crime scene, which she committed according to the soldiers, and that's why they continued to chase her in search of a flower, and no matter where she ran, through the forest or somewhere else, the soldiers were looking for her. That's how she ended up here. Xiao Zhu heard this story and thought about how terrible these soldiers were and how they could do this to a poor girl. Looking at her, Leo thought that it turns out that the girl became like this because she ate a flower, and her motivation was clear. It was revenge, and seeing the girl sitting right in front of him, he understood that it was justified. There must have been some rare treasures here, a sarcophagus and a flower, and reaching out, the lion thought that it was all a matter of human envy. It happened at the foot of his mountain and he would feel uncomfortable if he didn't figure it out, Leo thought to himself. Because after the revival of spiritual energy, people went crazy. To sit and do nothing was a bad option, he thought, because the next similar situation could be just around the corner. Looking at the girl, the king thought, Getting up from his seat, he decided that he should have been more careful, and the system told him to tie the girl. Going to Su Ling, the king said that the past could not be returned, but since the girl was his ghost, her problems became his problems, and the king decided to ask if the girl wanted to turn him in as a ghost. This greatly excited the girl, but with tears in her eyes she said that I agreed, addressing the king. The system reported that the binding was successful. After binding, the task servant for the lion was activated, and sitting opposite each other in a magic circle, they looked at each other. Then the system reported a reward, fragments of yang. It was 10 fragments that could be exchanged for a full-fledged yang. After hearing this from the Yan system, Leo thought that perhaps he could regain his human form with these powers. Since the young man was reborn into a golden lion, there was a system that made him stronger, no matter what he had been doing since childhood. He started getting a bonus of stamina, strength, speed, power, and so he grew, turning into a big lion. But nothing like this happened until he became the king of the Lion Mountain. The system began to send tasks, rewards for their successful completion. Such bonuses as wisdom, blood circulation, reputation began to be added to strength and speed, so the lion gradually became stronger. Looking at the scoreboard of the system in front of him, which congratulated him on the successful binding of the ghost and said that he had received the Yan Fragment Award. The Ghost Link mission has been activated, a pawn for the lion. The content of the task was as follows: let the ghost give up his obsessions and become a full-fledged servant. Then the reward for the mission will be a mysterious chance. Looking at this, the king did not understand what kind of mysterious chance could be a reward. It was too mysterious a reward and looked at the conditions that had to be fulfilled. The king thought to himself that this task was like slavery. Then he decided to see first what kind of Yan fragment was in front of him. The Yan fragment reward was displayed on the system's scoreboard. Using fragments, the lion can restore the body. For a body, 10 fragments of yang were needed, and then these fragments could be exchanged for 1 body of yang. If the fragments could help the lion regain his human form, then this reward should have been even better, he thought. After his inspections of the system, Leo, turning to Su Lin, asked the girl what her obsessions were. Was this idea to take revenge on those people who offended her? The lion asked the girl, looking at her. But then Su Ling replied that she wouldn't dare to cause trouble to the king. Now she was the ghost of the king and she had a new home. And it was unknown what happened to her family, whether they were alive or not, and even if they were all dead, she would not want them to end up in the wasteland, the girl said. Leo, looking at the sad Su Ling, thought that this poor child had experienced so much grief at a young age and decided to create his avatar, who would accompany and protect the girl everywhere. In front of them, a small version of the Lion King appeared from the lion's breath. This little lion was saying that there would be a second wave of spiritual energy recovery. Their mountain would also undergo some changes, so he had to protect this place. Looking at Su Ling, the little lion was talking about various changes, and at that time the king decided not to waste time and give out something else, and it turned out to be a weapon that he sent directly into Su Ling's hands. The weapon was magical. After receiving the dagger in her hands, she felt its power, because it was not just a dagger, it was incredibly sharp. Its power was the power of the evil spirit of the king. The lion looked at the girl and said that let it be heavy, because this dagger would not interfere with her, and then with tears in her eyes she thanked his majesty. At that moment, little Xiao Zhu appeared next to her, who said that the road ahead was difficult and she had to have a bright candle lighting her way. The girl thanked her new friend for this. At the foot of the Lion Mountain, mountains streamed to the north of the village of Manga. The girl went down with the lion, and they walked through the dense forest along the path. She showed him the place where their people disappeared. Xiao Zhu decided to ask if it was all because of the black fog. Then Su Lin said that after the unknown saw the sarcophagus, the fog immediately dissipated. The lion, looking around, thought that the aura of the ghost was too strong here, and they continued on their way. But then skeletons appeared in front of them, and seeing this, Su Ling realized that it was the clothes of Grandpa Lai, who went the very first in their village. And looking at him, she realized that they had all been killed by the black mist. Xiao Zhu leaning towards the skeleton, asking, how can a person who died yesterday turn into a skeleton so quickly? It was too much. Then the lion looked ahead of him and said that if any karma was destined to bear fruit, then he did not do evil, but brought good and joy. And in this evil world there should not be those who should suffer forever. Stretching their paws up with their energy, the avatar of the lion spoke. At that moment, bright lumps of light formed around the corpses. These were the fruits of karma and the path to perfection, the rejection of everything mundane, and nirvana. Spoke, and after which this light illuminated all the skeletons that were in front of them. The avatar informed Su Ling that he had cleansed the sadness in the souls of the villagers so that they could enter the cycle of reincarnation. Hearing this, the girl was insanely grateful, addressing His Majesty. Leo thought to himself that he was curious and whether such a number of ghosts absorbing spiritual energy at the foot of his mountain would become a problem in the future. Xiao Zhu informed her friends that she hoped that they would all be able to rest in peace, but then Su Ling explained that she did not find her parents among these corpses. Xiao Zhu suggested to go further and look for more. Having buried all the skeletons underground, the guys went further. Passing by a dense thicket, suddenly the lion felt that there was someone ahead and asked Su Ling to stop. Lev said that there were 5 of them and he could smell gunpowder. They were armed to the teeth and with live ammunition. Looking ahead, Su Ling was upset, and then realized that it was there that the sarcophagus was hiding earlier. Were those soldiers still there? The soldiers were already sitting exactly in the place where our heroes saw them and tried to have a snack after their long work. One of them said that this girl had them and if he caught her, he would deal with her for a very long time. And the second soldier was silent, then saying that he had a lip not stupid. On that the soldier replied that it was true, because the girl framed them very much. Because of this they had to spend the night in this place and eat terrible food. And they also had to sit on the branches of trees, eating their dinner in the company of a couple of corpses. There were skeletons in front of them, and the soldier, saying that the others did not know anything, said that these were the parents of that girl and she would surely want to find them and come back here. At that moment, he hit the skull and it began to crumble under his foot. The soldiers began to laugh, because all that the girl would get were corpses, and this amused them a lot, but they did not know that Su Ling and the king were watching this. Seeing this and hearing what they were talking about, Su Ling was beside herself with rage and grabbed her dagger. But then the king asked her to wait, because someone was walking straight to the soldiers. At that moment, the helicopter was being emitted, and on the rope was Master Mei Yun, who was addressing the soldiers. In front of them was a girl with a male physique, which was very strong. Mei was saying that she had heard that this man Luoyi had only taken the sarcophagus, asking if it was really true. To which the soldiers replied that he was in search of a flower that a girl from the village, whom they had previously visited, should have had. Then Mei Yun asked who cared about this flower at all, because it was just a flower. But what lies in the sarcophagus was a much worthwhile treasure, she said, heading straight to the roots of the trees. They reported that what she was looking for were the souls of 49 ghosts that had died in vain over the past 81 years. In the palm of the girl's hand was the soil of 3 existences, she said, taking in her hand the earth that glowed. After looking at it, the king realized that it was something important, and then the system discovered the soil of 3 existences, talking about the expansion of property. The king, who was sitting in his lair, was surprised to see this. What was this sinister knowledge that was a plus unit shown in the system? After hearing about the sinister knowledge, the lion saw that it was the first time he had encountered such a thing and now saw every vein on his body. Looking at his paw, he really saw everything that was on his body. Then the lion looked in the direction of the werewolf snake that was in front of him and he saw these veins on her whole body, too. Then seeing that he was looking at her, the snake blushed and asked what the king wanted from her. Turning away, the king looked at his paw again and thought that no matter what he did, he was getting stronger. But this ability awoke for the first time in him and he even saw an aura pulsating in his veins. And then looking around he saw an aura pulsating throughout the forest. His little avatar did not understand at all that it was because he saw all the same things that the lion saw. The ruins of a sarcophagus near the village of Mang. Soldiers were standing near the ruins of the sarcophagus, accompanied by Mei. One of the soldiers said that he did not know that this soil was so expensive and valuable, addressing the master in Mei Yun and saying that the girl was incredible. Mei Yun said that what she needed was not so important, and after looking at the soldiers, they realized that she could not worry, telling the girl that they would keep her secret. After looking at the soldiers and turning her sword to one of them, Mei said that only the dead can truly keep secrets, so she will give them a choice. Standing with a knife near his throat, the soldier was in a daze. Then other soldiers rushed to him, because it was the commander and they were ready to protect him, calling the girl an evil witch. How then she activated her bracelet and they were all under the influence of her powers, unable to fight her, so she attacked them and dealt with the soldiers with her ball. Having dealt with everyone, she said that they had exhausted all their strength and spent a lot of resources. Did they really think they could compete with her? Wiping her sword from blood, Mei Yun said and asked them to forgive them for this self-confidence. This sarcophagus was a real treasure, but even it could not compare with the strength of the soil of 3 existences, she said, and dripping blood on the soil, called the guys just idiots, because they did not understand anything. If it wasn't for her idea to use the villagers to find the way, then whoever needed the sarcophagus wouldn't have gotten it and would have killed all their people. At that moment, without suspecting, Su Ling approached her, attacking Mei with thoughts that everything was because of her. Because of this, Mei turned around and started attacking. When Little King and Xiaozhu saw it, they were surprised how the girl could see Su Ling. The girl subconsciously dodged the knife. Becoming a ghost, she could not be afraid of injuries, and sitting down, she looked ahead and realized that there was no one in front of her, and then taking out her glasses, she thought that the bracelet could not be mistaken and felt someone's strength. A second later, through her glasses, she saw a girl calling her a pathetic little thing that she did not expect to see here. She knew that the girl in front of her was a ghost. Su Ling at this moment stood in a stance ready to attack Mei, holding her dagger in her hands. Rushing at Mei, she said that to avenge her parents, to which the girl said that why did she stick to her, and who was she that when she killed her parents. Mei turned to the girl, to which Su Lin was very surprised did Mei see her. Then Mei turned to the girl with a phrase about whether she really saw how many ants she crushed. Because of these words, Su Ling rushed at her with all her anger. They grappled in battle. Su Ling only had a small dagger, and Mei had great strength and held a huge knife in her hand. The king and Xiaozhu were watching from the side. The king was thinking that even if Mei saw the girl, why didn't she immediately attack and react? Which was even stranger, the reaction was not like fright and surprise. Is this not the first time this Mei encounters ghosts, or does she just know how to overcome? At that moment, he saw that Mei was ready to deal with Su Ling and realized that he needed to intervene to keep the girl alive. Jumping out of his hiding place, he used the golden lion technique, dragon absorption, and decided to help Su Ling, who was definitely losing in this battle with Mei, and attacked her. And the girl did not understand how Mei could cut the clothes on her because it was impossible. She was just a ghost. And Mei explained to her that it was elementary because she had a special knife in her hands, which is designed just for people like her. Su Ling realized that she had no other choice but to go back and try to attack. But the range of her blade is so great. Will the girl be able to do it? Thinking that this is the end, but seeing a loophole, she decided that she could act. Mei understood her attack and grabbed the girl, saying that any magic or illusion was useless here. Xiaozhu, addressing the king, said that the girl was just a little ghost, that she had just turned. She could not cope with Mei and asked His Majesty to help the girl, to which His Majesty replied that he was a man. So he thought that together it was to kill the enemy with his own hands. This time the moment he decided to look at the bracelet that was on the girl's hand, and I decided to intervene in the fight. Mei was about to kill Su Ling, but then the girl disappeared right from her friends and so on, captured Mei, and she did not understand what was happening because she was under her gun. The king came out of the shadows, telling Su Ling not that her one was very good, and now he saw that the girl was really a ghost. Then Xiaozhu, who was flying next to them, asked what happened, and Su Ling apologized to Wu and asked the king for forgiveness because she was too reckless. The king explained that Mei's bracelet is something like a magical weapon that can sense the presence of someone else's aura. Every time an enemy attacks, her bracelet indicates the direction of the attack, and thus she avoided it at the very beginning. But in order to confirm that she was not really alone here, she had to put on glasses. However, her attitude to these two items varies greatly, to the bracelet of trust much more, and for sure the reason is that she was previously a victim of an illusion. The king said, looking at the defeated Mei and Su Ling, who was standing next to her. The king continued to say that now for Mei to see is not the same as to make sure of the truthfulness of what is happening. Xiaozhu intervened in the conversation, not saying that this is why the king released his aura. It was done to disrupt perception. It was at the very moment when the king was looking at Mei's bracelet, and when Su Ling was unable to attack her because of this. Su Ling, on the other hand, was thinking about how noble this king was, and his little clone was talking about what was expected from the villagers of Manga and asked not to be such a reckless girl in the future. But then Mei rebelled and said that it turned out that the girl Su Ling had an assistant. Su Ling didn't expect the girl to stand up after her attack. Turning around, Su Ling saw that Mei stood up and all three friends were looking at her. At the same time, Mei decided to attack Su Ling and jumped right at her, attacking the girl with her huge sword, which was specially created for killing ghosts. So Su Ling thought that it was impossible to let the girl get close and tried to repel her attack with his little dagger. The dagger slid over Mei's dagger and Su Ling was able to repel Mei's attack. Then Xiaozhu, rooting for the girl with all her heart, shouted to Su Ling how strong and cool she was. The girl said that she was always not a miss, standing in a stand and looking at Mei, who managed to cut off her hand. Only this hand suddenly began to twist with threads and fell back. It was like a connection, as if someone had sewn with threads. Mei saw this. Su Ling was very surprised and scared. The king stood next to her body, thinking that the woman was dead. but whether her avatar could survive the death of the main body, and the king decided to try a new technique of consciousness. Then looking at Mei, he saw that it was the spirit of 3 existences, and this was true because she dripped her own blood on the ground, after which apparently she was able to get this power. At that moment, Mei attacked Su Ling with her arm, which was severed and dangling from some ropes. Su Ling was able to deflect her blow and realized that the range of attacks had increased. But at this rate her speed should have become lower. After looking at Su Ling, she decided that it was time for her to go on the attack, too, and she rushed straight at the girl, attacking her with her dagger using the 1000 decapitating lightning technique. But as soon as she came close to Mei, creepy ropes that had been sticking out of her hand earlier began to appear from her, and she turned into a creepy monster, with these very ropes writhing out of her chest and grabbed Su Ling. The girl was unable to resist her. Seeing this, Xiao Zhu asked His Majesty to help the girl. The king was thinking that his avatar was also a spirit and it would be bad if he got hurt, because he did not want to risk the deity. But then Su Lin was able to use the dagger, as she thought. But nothing happened and Mei grabbed her with his ropes as tightly as possible so that the girl could not escape anywhere. Because for Mei, this was equivalent to Su Ling daring to bully her. So after repeating that the girl did not expect tenderness, Mei bound her with ropes as tightly as possible. At that moment, golden energy appeared and Mei was surprised, because something went wrong with her plan. Then she saw a big lion that was carrying Su Ling in her arms. Leo also used the Yan fragment and congratulated the young man on getting the first level. The lion carried Su Ling in his arms and told the girl not to be so reckless, but then surprised that His Majesty had saved the girl. They landed on the ground and began to look at what was happening to Mei. The king saved the girl and, addressing Xiao Zhu, asked her and Su Ling to hold their breath, cover their ears and control their heartbeat. After which he used the lion's roar attack that was so powerful that it struck Mei down. But at this moment, when Mei was damaged, the king decided to look at the knife she was using, because there was not a crack on it. Picking up the knife, the king rejoiced. The system congratulated the host on the victory over the first incentive, giving him the strength of points +5, prestige +4 and strength +3 for using the lion's roar skill. There was a skill +3. The soil of 3 existences was also absorbed. This is one of the consciousness was +2, and the equipment of the crimson cloud was also increased. Extended sword attribute +10. After looking at all this, the king was very happy. Could the attributes really be expanded? He did not know about it and thought that he had used the skill for a reason. Everything turned out pretty well. He was already in semi-human form, but touching his face still didn't understand why his neck was hairy. Then, after looking in the mirror, he began to scream, because this strange system did not work. How long he had to wait for healing, he could not understand. Although to admit to himself, he really looked good. The system reported that there was 1 level of odor blocking and a fragment of Yan 1 out of 10 was used. The king, with 2 ladies, was thinking that there was something that he wanted to return most of all, and looking that these pants were very disappointed. Su Lin ran up to him and asked His Majesty not to dramatize because everything ended well, to which Leo said that he did not dramatize, but just dealt with the villains. Here Xiao Zhu noted that the form of the king that he took was simply amazing and she was in love with him, to which the system reported that the host absorbed the soil of 3 existences and consciousness increased by +7. Level 2 was obtained. At that moment, the king realized that he had seen an aura floating in the air, because as expected from the system, he had become stronger. The system reported on related missions, because the pride of the lion was not completed. Su Ling turned to His Majesty and thanked the young man for helping her. The king thought to himself that it seemed that revenge was not over yet, and moreover they never found out what kind of sarcophagus it was. The king turns to Su Ling saying that he knew that the girl would not give up until she took revenge, but they had to go down the mountain to finish their investigation and taking the mantle that lay on the ground. The king decided to cover his face so that no one could recognize him. At that moment, the sun went down and Xiao Zhu, hiding in the king's robe, said that she could not appear in the sun, asking for help. Su Ling said that she was also forbidden to appear in the sun and ran straight under the mantle to the king, to which the king asked Su Ling not to climb up to him. Then he remembered, blushing already, that the girl could move in and he said that Su Ling needed to move in, for example, into Mei's body and pointing at her with her finger. Su Ling shouted that she did not want this and climbed to hug the king. And the king asked why Su Ling did not want after all. It was necessary to do it sooner. Her life was at stake. Su Ling, with tears in his eyes, hugging the king, said that Mei was ugly and therefore the girl did not want to move into her. The king asked if Su Ling remembered what he had taught her. If they met mercenaries, they had to pretend to be Mei. The girls still had to settle into her body, and while they were walking along the road, they had to try to pretend to be someone she really wasn't. Therefore, they decided to get to know these guys better, pointing the finger. The king was talking about those guys who were in front of them. Mei walking behind him was very sad and just agreed with him. Our heroes came to the camp and everyone greeted Master Mei, waiting for her return. The soldiers asked if Mei had found what she was looking for and where they should go now. Mei greeted her comrades and said that they should not have gone back to where they came from, saying that she had found what she was looking for. Then, seeing the lion in the mantle, the soldier decided to ask Master Mei who was in front of them for what she, getting into the car, asked them to stop talking. The system showed that the king used an aircraft and therefore courage was added +1. They took off by helicopter, climbing high up, after which the dispatcher reported that they had arrived in Shilin and would be landing in 10 minutes. In front of them towered huge skyscrapers and a wall on which giant monsters hung, and their bones lay nearby. These guys really didn't care about anything, the soldier told his comrade, because they were ready to rummage through corpses for the sake of finding new resources, they said. Among themselves, the soldiers talked about people who were rummaging through the bones of animals, looking at the monsters that were in front of them, then who approved of the fact that these were the bones of animals that could be sold on the black market, but if you were lucky enough to find something worthwhile. There were people sitting below who were looking for something in the fragments of these bones that were left from huge animals. The soldiers watching these people from above from the plane said that it was strange that they were not afraid of being blown up, because there could be detonating devices everywhere to scare off various animals and to protect the territory. At that moment, Mei looked at them threateningly and the soldiers forgot that they also had no alternative earnings. They acted according to the guidelines invented by Mei. The king looked at the city and thought that unlike the prosperous Lion Mountain, the cities had fallen into decline after the restoration of energy. Then the system informed the king that he felt a sense of pity, so a +1 was added to wisdom. Looking at the cities that were similar to our state after the apocalypse, the king was sad to watch this spectacle. The next moment, the soldiers informed the master that they were on the spot. Their helicopter landed on the site, to which Mei said that everything was fine, and after knocking out the soldiers, they and the king decided to go further. After getting out of the helicopter, they stepped onto the platform in front of the Prosperity Corporation, to which the king said that this corporation was too huge. After looking at all this, Xiao Zhu said that this was just an enemy base and nothing more, and His Majesty could incinerate everything here in a couple of seconds, to which the king asked not to worry and first offered to look around to his friends. They entered the building and it was already night at that moment. Having dealt with all the guards, they decided to change into what these guards were wearing. But after looking at what the guard was wearing, the king thought that this jacket, which he was holding in his hands, would be too small for him. Xiao Zhu, watching the king, who wanted to put on a jacket so that it was clearly not the right size for him, said that according to her previous investigation, the evidence they needed was hidden right here, and they decided to go to the archive. Here the king used his divine consciousness, because when he used it, he could look through the walls and saw that there was a girl behind these walls who had a gun in her hand. The king realized that they were not the only ones who made their way into this building today. The girl also heard them and therefore was ready. In her hand was a gun, and she was looking straight at the door that was in front of her. The king, opening the door, said that he would go first, and as soon as he decided, the girl began to shoot. Having hit the king right in the chest with her pistol bullet, Mei was scared, addressing His Majesty and calling the girl all kind words, began to attack her with a dagger. But the king stopped Su Ling, saying that everything was fine with him. Looking at the bullet that was in his hand, he realized that people use aura to make bullets. What kind of technology was it? He thought to himself. Then the girl realized that her bullets did not work. The girl thought to herself how the bullets could have passed through him. Really, the lion that was in front of her was one of the awakened ones, and she started attacking him again with all the shots she had. But the king didn't care about her attacks. He just stood still and didn't move. At some point, he decided to fight off the bullet, and it broke the whole gun with a bullet, so that in the girl's hand, she was very surprised. Then he grabbed her and asked her not to move, otherwise he could not vouch for himself. The girl, looking more closely, saw that there was a werewolf in front of her, because this unclean corporation, was it really the technology of animal synthesis? Looking at the lion, she thought. Being held hostage by him, she said that he could kill her if he wanted. Looking at the girl that he was holding with one hand, the king asked if she belonged to the Prosperity Corporation. And if not, then what was she doing here? The girl replied that this corporation was cursed and illegally seized their projects. She came to find evidence. Then our friends realized that they were not rivals at all. After looking closely at the girl in her blouse, he saw some piece of paper and wondered what it was. After taking out a piece of paper, he very confused the girl. But when he saw a map in front of him on which there was a lion mountain, he realized that they really were scouring his territory, because the mountain was circled in a red circle. And this meant that everyone was interested in this place. At that moment, a helicopter appeared in front of the corporation, which was landing on the site. Then everyone realized that Master Lo Yi had arrived at the headquarters and it was his leader. Our heroes were surprised that it happened so quickly. And Su Ling in the face of Mei was very angry after hearing this name. This is the sarcophagus that the headquarters needed. What was all this mystery about? Why did people get her to come at night to use candles instead of normal lighting? The girl said, standing between two men. To which Lo Yi, addressing the girl, said that she probably did not know, but the sarcophagus could crack when exposed to light, and the light from candles is not the limit for him. In front of us was the awakened B rank, Luo, the director of the branch in Shilin, and the girl who stood between the men. It was the awakened S rank and Mei Hu, the secretary of the president of the QIANGSHENG group. They were standing in the study, looking at the city under the light of a candle, and our heroes, also watching them from the side, realized where these people hid the sarcophagus. Mei turned to the king asking what they were going to do. They were going to transfer him somewhere. The girl said about the sarcophagus, to which the king asked not to worry and it was necessary to observe this situation a little more. Luo Yi said that if there were no problems, then he was ready for transportation. To which Mei Hu turned to him and said that it was not worth it, because she wanted to do everything herself and asked him to provide it to her. The man standing next to her was tall as a rock and she addressed him by name, calling him as Wu Gang. He grabbed the sarcophagus with one hand and decided to carry it. It was an awakened A rank and it was the captain of the QIANGSHENG Group Security Service, Wu Gang. He was so strong that it was not difficult for him to lift the sarcophagus. The king, watching this picture, thought that this Wu Gang was quite strong, so he was also awakened. At that moment, the girl looked at Luo Yi and asked him if she hadn't said that they needed help. Why then someone was there, and she turned her hand gaze exactly to where our heroes were standing. Releasing the fishing line from her hand, she began to attack the king. But he was able to grab the fishing line in time. It was incredible that the woman felt his presence. It was like she was also awakened, the king thought. Luo Yi immediately ran towards him, addressing the king as a bug that had made its way here and with which he immediately wanted to deal. Attacking the king, Luo Yi realized that the king was fast and then easily dodged his blow. But Luo Yi believed that he was even faster and asked if the king could match him, attacking him countless times. Luo Yi thought that he was attacking the king so hard that he was not even able to fight him back. But at this time the points were added to the king and he was clearly winning. But Luo Yi did not understand this and decided that the king had to show him his face. So taking off his mantle, he saw that it was not a man at all in front of him. No wonder he had such stamina and reflexes. He was an awakened werewolf, as Luo Yi thought when he looked at the king that stood in front of him. Seeing this, Mei Hu thought that the man was a handsome man and enjoyed this sight to her heart's content. Luo Yi believed that the appearance of the king of the beast gives him a good protection that surpasses ordinary people. Was he right? He said. But then, did the king ever get a light strike? Asked Luo Yi and decided to use the speed of lightning attacking our hero. And then, the king used a golden flash and he remained standing in place, as he had been standing. Luo Yi couldn't understand what was happening. But then the system reported that the king had defeated the awakened B rank. Speed was +6, prestige +2 and stamina +6. Luo Yi collapsed in front of him screaming and holding onto his legs. Xiao Zhu, addressing his majesty, said that he was very strong and destroyed the enemy with one blow, to which the young man noted that he did nothing. And this opponent himself lay down right in front of him. Mei Hu, who was watching everything, did not understand how this was possible because Luo Yi had rank B. Was this guy right in front of them even stronger? Wu Gang, holding the sarcophagus in his hands, said that Luo Yi was a good-for-nothing dog and threw the sarcophagus directly at the king. Liu Fan grabbed the sarcophagus and carefully put it down, shouting at people that the sarcophagus was a real treasure. How could they throw it? And what if they hurt someone? What would they do then? Wu Gang, seeing this, did not understand at all what the king was talking about. Then he decided to use his muscles, and he turned into a huge machine that went straight at the king. To pass the test, he was forced to wear a special vest made of nano-sized carbon fiber, and no matter how he strained his muscles, this vest would still tear, Wu Gang said, going straight to meet the king. Xiao Zhu, standing next to the king, asked Wu Gang that it would be better not to wear it here, because it looked too ugly in her opinion. Attacking the king, Wu Gang said that he advised our friends not to test him for strength and calmly accept their death. But Su Lin attacked him in the person of Mei, and saying that he would die today, attacked Wu Gang with her dagger. The girl punched him right in the chest, but could not injure him. The blade was stuck in his chest and she couldn't even pull it out, because the blade was stuck right in the muscles, and Wu Gang said that muscles are strength, because they were very powerful and no one can harm him because of these muscles. Then he, using these very muscles, was able to repel Mei's blow along with her knife, and they flew away together. But at that moment the king was behind Wu Gan, saying that he was too confident in his abilities here. And what was interesting was that he had brains. Did he train well by substituting a hand that was "I'm ready to give a crack to Wu Gang"? And he didn't understand what the king was talking about. But after giving a click to Wu Gang, he flew away and fell. The king realized that Wu Gang had not trained his brain and was therefore defeated by him. Nehu, watching this, said that these two pathetic simple-minded scum were simply incredible, because she was not like them. Mei rose from the very bottom, a girl who lived on the street step by step. She took the position of secretary to the president of their company, and thanks to her sharp mind, she awakened a special ability. I remember my terrible past, where there were only mountains of corpses and a terrible life. She turned to Brother Leo, saying that she was so scared. Was he going to attack her and could go forward? She was ready, taking off her cloak under which there was a uniform in which she was ready to fight with him. Using seduction, she decided that this was the first step, and it didn't matter what kind of person was in front of her, because no man could resist her abilities. They all became her puppets. When the king saw this pose in which the temptress stood, he did not understand what kind of strange pose it was. Then Su Ling and Xiao Zhu realized that it was the temptress. Mei Hu, despite the fact that the heroes did not succumb to her charms, especially, the king realized that it did not work and she could not believe it. But she used a close look and saw that this guy from the balance of energy did his body consist only of yang energy, and now it was clear why Mei Hu's charms on the lions didn't work. Having tested this theory, in this case, she decided that it was necessary to awaken another passion in the young man. And with all her might she used the highest degree of seduction, talking about this baby coming to her, addressing the Lion King. At that moment the king felt something, and it was a ferocious power that clouded his consciousness. The girl they tied up fell asleep, and at that moment she was thinking about how she wanted sushi stewed pork meatballs and how delicious it was, and also wanted an additive in 3 times the size. Snoring, she was lying in the pantry, in which our friends locked her, completely unaware of what was happening on the floor above at that moment. The lion was completely enraged and his mane glowed gold and flames were coming from it. Then Su Ling asked what was wrong with his majesty. He also started attacking the girl and was completely out of control. Then Mei Hu realized that it was pure lust. It was impossible to control. She decided that even if she wanted to return everything as it was, she would not succeed. And after trying to use her power on the lion that was coming at her, she did not succeed. She thought that this was the end. Standing up and looking at Xiao Zhu, Su Ling asked what happened to his majesty. What happened to him? Then Xiao Zhu said that it was the fire of desire. His majesty was consumed by it. Su Ling didn't understand what it meant. Then Xiao Zhu decided to explain to Su Ling what had happened to the king and what had happened to him. There is a special energy in each of the people. The fire consists of the flame of desire and the flame of karma. Both of these flames are extremely dangerous, so they need to be suppressed with the help of various spiritual practices. But this woman disturbed His Majesty's mental balance and awakened desire in him. Now the king was driven by instincts, and if not intervened, his desire would burn him to the ground. Mei looked in front of her, seeing the burning king, and asked what they should do. Then Xiao Zhu said that the only way was to satisfy his desire. At that moment, the king, using his fire, began to attack Mei Hu, who was very hot, so hot from this fire that she wanted to die from it. Mei, looking at this, kept saying that the girl deserved it, since she inflamed his desire, then she had to be responsible for it. Xiao Zhu said that, in addition, she knew what this part of His Majesty was, because he consisted of the purest yang, so no one could bear his desire. Grabbing Mei Hu, she recognized the power accumulated over 20 years of abstinence of the Lion King. Mei shouted to Xiao Zhu about what was already to be done, just to watch the girl burn alive. Xiao Zhu replied that she did not know if she could stand such a sight, because she is the goddess of candles, and any flame, whether it was natural or spiritual, had to obey her. But the girl could not stand His Majesty's desire, but she still decided to try absorbing the flame. This distracted the king, and he drew attention to Xiao Zhu, who was in front of him, she explained that it was just a drop. All that the Majesty had to give her Xiao Zhu in hugging him. She stopped the same color as the king's hair, golden, just like a flame. After looking at all this, Meihu thought about whether she was still alive. There was a lion lying on the floor in front of her. She thought that he was too dangerous. He almost burned down because of his own desire. Then Mei attacked her, saying that the girl was a scoundrel and asked her not to move or she would cut her throat. In front of Meihu's face was the dagger that Mei was holding in her hand. Then the king woke up and asked why he suddenly went limp and what happened to him. Rubbing his head, the hero asked. The system told him that he entered the sage mode, so mental strength increased by plus 100, determination by plus 10, and valor was minus 100. Looking at the system in front of him, he looked at what the system provided him. Then the system explained that it congratulated him on passing the lion ceremony. He acquired a new skill, the mind of the sacred fire. Hearing about this fire skill, the king was delighted, because it sounded damn cool in his opinion. Then paying attention to the girl who was sitting right in front of him, the king's nose bled from surprise. Mei again grabbing Meihu by the throat asked what the girl had done to the king again, to which she replied that she had done nothing. Xiao Zhu in her new uniform immediately rushed to the king, asking if his majesty was alright. After learning what had happened, the king asked if Xiao Zhu had become like this because she absorbed his desire. The girl grew in size and became almost like an ordinary person, but her aura was golden, just like fire. To which she explained to the king that she would return to her former state as soon as she digested everything. Or rather, she would digest all the energy that she could take from the Lion King. Mei said that the girl who was in front of them was to blame for everything and asked to let her kill her, to which Meihu asked if the girl wanted to kill her and she was against it. Using his majesty's power, he attacked Meihu again and she begged to spare her, because if she didn't spare her, she would do whatever he asked. The lion, looking at her crawling on all fours, said that she knelt in front of him too quickly. Liu Fan decided to ask why the girl needed this sarcophagus and what was the use of it, to which she replied that she did not know all the details. She only knew that this was a magical weapon for reincarnation. Then the king tried not to look at the girl's torn outfit and talked about her telling in more detail. Meihu heard that ancient secrets were recorded inside this sarcophagus, and if you lie down in it, you can learn them all and reincarnate. The lion asked what the price was. The girl replied that if you know all these secrets, you will certainly go crazy, and the body will turn to dust. Leo thought about what was coming out. The ground around him pairs those who failed. Maybe it could be very useful. But the risk was too great, his majesty said. At that moment, Su Ling's spirit separated from Mei's body, and she begged his majesty to let her try to do it. The young man said that it was too risky and he couldn't let Su Ling do it. A hint from the system said that the ghost's mission was completed. A chance to succeed in the sarcophagus test was awarded. The chance of success has been increased by 30%. The king was angry at the system, calling it disgusting. Was that really all he got? The enraged king asked the system and asked to give him a chance. Leo demanded it from the system, because there was no point in increasing the probability. It was stupid in his opinion. Then Su Ling, again turning to the king, asked him to let her do it, because her life belongs to him, and if she does not do it, then how can she call herself and his ghost? The king agreed, and using the flame of the heart and the flame of the soul put the girl right in the sarcophagus. The flame of the heart and the flame of the soul were activated. When the girl is inside, if something goes wrong, she had to give a sign to the king and he immediately pulled her out, and lying down in the sarcophagus, the girl asked to start the procedure. Closing her eyes, she plunged into darkness. Then the sky turned pink and there were golden sparks everywhere. At that moment the sarcophagus opened. At that moment, the girl saw her village in front of her and was in her former guise. Looking at the village, she saw her parents who called her, saying that it was time to eat, and her father calling to him, asked to pour him some wine. Seeing mom and dad, she began to cry, knowing that all this was a lie, because she knew not to deceive herself, because it was just an illusion. Her parents were dead. But she decided that she could just take a peek and go. By the will of fate, when she entered the house, she saw her parents, who were also laughing. Sitting down at the table, Su Ling sat down with them to enjoy the meal and felt the very atmosphere that she had not felt for a long time. At this time, she was being watched by the king and Xiao Zhu, who asked what had happened, to which the king replied that so far everything was fine. As long as the flame was stable, he hoped that the girl would completely cope, because they did not really suspect that Su Ling was passing now. Evening came and Su Lin's parents asked all the guests to come into their house, showing exactly where they needed to go. The guests have already told their parents what a beautiful daughter their daughter was and what a beautiful young man she married. This guy was obviously lucky. for which the parents thanked their friends for their kind words to the new couple. In the hall, Su Lin was sitting on a chair, covered with a handkerchief, and her husband was sitting next to her. She wanted to say something to her husband, but did not have time. At that moment, the sun began to rise and Xiao Zhu informed His Majesty that the sun was about to set and if Su Ling did not wake up, she would be bewitched. At that moment our heroes were standing next to the girl who was lying in the sarcophagus. The king realized that the girl was struggling. Although the fire was still burning, it was very difficult for her to resist the charms of the sarcophagus and it was impossible to wait any longer. The king used his energy. The king decided that it was necessary to bring Su Ling back, and therefore, breaking through the magical barriers, he touched her forehead to awaken the girl. Calling Su Lin, he broke through her dream. Then there, sitting on her chair next to her husband, Su Lin addressed her husband. The girl had already started to lift her handkerchief, but then through him she saw a lion who called her by name. Seeing His Majesty, she woke up and got up from the sarcophagus, was surprised that it was happening. Xiao Zhu saw that the girl got up, shouted that it was bad. It was already the case because the sun had already risen. At that moment, magical forces hit the girl and her eyes lit up with a yellow light. Then the king realized that they had succeeded. Xiao Zhu also shouted joyfully that Su Ling had succeeded and the girl, sitting in the sarcophagus, was crying from the fact that she had succeeded. Su Ling was grateful to His Majesty that he was able to save her. Then he greeted the girl and hugged his friends. They were glad that they had succeeded. The system congratulated the host on completing a special task. By rewarding him with skills, prestige plus 20, the demon's consciousness is upgraded to level 3. The skill, to look from a height, was also awakened and the skill, communication, was awakened. Then the system reported that the hero entered the illusion of 3 lives and received secret phrases. The king thought that he had received so many rewards for this task, but he did not think that this would happen after entering the illusion. Su Ling must have received something very interesting. Then the system reported the prolongation of the effect of drawing the energy of conjugation with the lion rock. From the side, Mei Hu watched all this, saying that she also congratulated these guys on their reunion and that it was very touching, and she probably had nothing to do here and decided to go. But then she grabbed Xiao Zhu by the ear, saying that she offended their king and thought that he would be able to leave so easily. This was not going to happen, so Xiao Zhu asked what His Majesty was going to do with this vixen. Mei Hu cried and begged her to let go. The king thought that she had awakened a desire in him and forced him to use a special technique. But on the other hand, it helped him to increase the level of his skills. Then grabbing the girl, he talked about her helping him become better until he reached greatness. This was a big surprise for Mei Hu. After leaving the building, everything was engulfed in flames. Despite this, the king thought that now that he had built a connection with the Lion Mountain, he was able to destroy everyone. At that moment, the system was warning that there was a danger. The second energy recovery was about to begin. Lion Mountain, early morning. The system reported that it was necessary to pay attention. The second energy recovery would begin right now and notified everyone about it. Hearing this, all the creatures, the living, began to be reborn and turn into some kind of horror. Here a werewolf snake crawled into the cave, addressing His Majesty, and he said that this moment had finally come. The mission that the system showed said that the hero had to open borders and expand influence. The explanation was as follows: connect your spirit with the evil force or the Lion Mountain to make the area around the mountain its source of power, and try to maximize the territory of the Lion Mountain until the end of the second stage of energy recovery to withstand a large flow of aura. As expected from the system, did it really have no limit? The king thought to himself, was it impossible to stop it? The system reported the attention that the king had to pay. The system reported that if the king does not expand the territory, does not reach the stated goal in the allotted time, then his body will not be able to resist the flow of the aura and he will die. Progress was 0 out of 100,000. The king was angry because he knew it was all the tricks of the system. For what she was doing to him, he could not understand at all. Speaking of the scale, he had not explored the territory of Lion Mountain before. The king thought to himself, using a special skill at the same time and trying it out, and he decided to try out the demon consciousness. Now he could see the flow of energy throughout Lion Mountain, as if he was the creator. Looking at the mountain, he saw a golden tree that had fallen and he did not understand at all why it happened. Wasn't it supposed to be guarded by lizards? Where did they go? At that moment he saw a lizard lying on the ground next to the tree. Angry king thought that someone dared to offend his brother and use demonic consciousness. While inspecting the territory, the king thought about who dared to behave in this way on his territory, and even escaped. He decided to follow the trail of his energy, because the energy was everywhere painted purple. The king thought that he would easily find the one who had harmed his brothers, and he saw a huge centipede that was crawling right along the way, radiating this energy. When the king saw the enemy, he turned to him, because how dare he create problems on his territory. He also knocked down his golden tree, because it was the root of the spiritual power of the Lion Mountain. The tree blooms every 10 years and bears fruit every 10 years, and its fruits ripen for 10 years. Eating its fruit could get the power of a demon for 30 years. The king decided that he would kill this villain and use him for fertilizers. Calling his friends, he said that they were advancing to battle. The talking parrot, the captain of the Lion Mountain Air Force, the green snake, the master of the Lion Mountain Duan Hall monster, they, together with our king, advanced with other animals to battle. Beside the king also walked White Fox, Hall Master Zishan, Lion Mountain Monster, Giant Bear, Hall Master Bayu, Lion Mountain Monster. When they came to the place where the golden tree grew, they found a lizard that addressed His Majesty and Brother Bear. It was the second brother of Pangolin, the guardian of the Golden Peak, the Lion Mountain Monster. He was lying in a pit and was all beaten up. Then the bear leaned over to the lizard and taking it by the paw addressed the king, saying that the lizard could still be saved. The king asked to take care of him, and he would deal with the centipede, which was nearby and began to hiss at our hero. Hearing this, he was beside himself with anger as this monster could hiss at him and decided that he would show him what a lion's roar was. Then a snake appeared next to him, who asked His Majesty not to dirty his hands about these creatures and asked him to stop. But the king was already furious and wanted to attack. But then the snake asked him to do it and decided to attack the enemy. Twisting him, she began her battle. While she was fighting, the king asked where this opponent came from. Was it one of the inhabitants of the Lion Mountain? To which the lizard replied, apologizing to His Majesty that he could not protect him, saying that once this creature was an earthworm loosening the soil under a tree, but during the restoration of spiritual energy, he began to mutate, but only with his body and mind. Then he went berserk and completely out of control. The snake at that moment tried to deal with this centipede, which was right in its teeth, but the lizard said that then this species ate leaves that fell from the tree all year round, but it was not so easy to cope with them. At that moment the snake thought that it had dealt with the monster, but it was not so. Now it had recovered again and was ready to fight her using its technique, the split of the underground dragon. After seeing this technique, the king realized that it was a split, and if it was so, then it really was earthworms. The snake continued to fight with them, and the worms attacked her, calling Xiao kin. The snake said that it was such a hassle, because the more she kills, the more they became. The fox, the bear, and the parrot gathered together and said that they wanted to help the snake deal with these scoundrels, but she was so proud that she asked them not to interfere and said that she would deal with them herself. The snake worked hard for His Majesty day and night, so it was time for her to show what she was capable of. The snake told everyone else. At that moment, she used an incredible dragon technique, the shape of a sea serpent, and having changed, a beautiful azure dragon appeared in front of us, which looked very powerful, but at the same time beautiful. The worms were afraid of such a transformation, and the dragon used a breath caster to deal with them. After attacking the worms, she thought that she had coped and again assumed the former form of a snake. Seeing this, the friends of the snake and the king were delighted to say that Xiao King was a very good fighter. The fox, bear, and the parrot were just shocked. But then the parrot started screaming that the snake said that he could only sleep in a cave, and he thought it was because of the characteristics of cold-blooded animals. And she used His Majesty's power and increased her own to improve. The guys realized that the snake was very lazy and insidious lazy. She also asked them to be silent, because it was His Majesty who bewitched her. The king, watching from the side, thought that how ridiculous it was, this struggle for favor, and the system said that he received the love of subordinates, prestige +1 and charm +1. But they began to rejoice early. The snake defeated the worms. They recovered again and ran underground, as our heroes saw. Then the snake also leaned back into the ground, saying that it was coming for them. She could not leave it just like that. It was a matter of her pride. The king, observing this, using his power, saying that below are the lines of power of the Lion Mountain. If you believe the system, then the source of his power is directly connected to them, and if they damage them together with the snake, the consequences will be very deplorable. Therefore, His Majesty also had to go, and he used the sacred fire technique, the seal of spiritual power. After going underground and seeing Xiao Kin, the king asked how she felt and how she was. After seeing His Majesty, she said that the worms had escaped. Those guys were guided by the skin, but her sense of smell was completely interrupted by the aura of the spiritual power line. The snake told the king, The devilish consciousness was activated. The lion was in all its glory. His mane billowed up and the lightning electrified, forming a beautiful yellow light. The first restoration on the surface, and the second in the bowels of the earth. The king felt as if these lions were continuing in his spine, telling his friends that they had to go to dig through everything to find these worms, and they moved right through the cave following the king. The place where they were walking was like a lion's den. Then looking at the ceiling, the king saw hieroglyphs. These were ancient writings that the king had seen on the ceiling to lie in this cave. At this moment, the snake asked his majesty to look ahead. In front of them were the remains of these worms. Then our heroes were very surprised how the worms could die. At that moment, a vortex formed behind the worms and a red umbrella appeared. In front of this red umbrella lay a huge cemetery of these worms that had died. Seeing a red umbrella in front of him, the king was very surprised what it was. Then legs appeared from the umbrella, and then turning around, a beautiful girl appeared under it, saying that the king and his retinue were just in time. In front of them was Kai Luo's red umbrella.